gonna.
Little boy playing in the street. Worn clothes, no shoes on his feet. Little boy never.
Oh, yes. So here we are, brother.
We're back.
Episode 5.
Episode 5.
Had a little hiatus there for a minute, huh?
Yeah, I had some shows on the West Coast. Visiting with my family, my kids, and my grandbabies.
Well, that and it's harvest.
Yep.
So
And then there's harvest. Yeah, October I take a break because I got a really good side gig, pays me really good,
Yeah.
and that was kind of the deal that I made with the gentleman. Was that, you know what, during harvest, no gigs, just haul ass, and it's a good thing. And I
Beans
I enjoy
mostly.
it. Beans, yeah.
Yep.
Beans and Milo. That's what we do in the fall, but it's enjoyable. It's very relaxing, to be honest with you. It's really the easiest job I ever had in
Just
my
road
entire
time.
life. Yeah, it is. It's so easy.
That's what we do.
And I
play
love
music
and I love the
anyway.
area of Kansas because I get to meet people, and that's part of what I enjoy about it is hanging out with these folks and these co-ops and stuff and getting to know them.
The Midwesterners.
Yeah, the Midwesterners. They're just everybody's so friendly. It's not like California. Well, California, certain areas of California. So we won't delve into that until we get into this episode.
Until we get in there, yeah.
But first, we want to just kick up things off with our first sponsor. We want to talk about our first sponsor.
Basically, man, entertainment takes sponsors these days. Right now, we're in kind of a lull in entertainment, I think. It's not just not making the money it used to, so we are really blessed to have some really cool sponsors. The Red Shed being our first sponsor, man. Those guys are just killer. It's Merle and Gail Croker out there in Hutchinson.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when they just started, it was a party. It was just a party out in their garage.
Yeah, the story behind how that got started is really interesting.
Then they built a red shed where Merle just had a whole bunch of his like classic cars and stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
And then he had to move all those out because we just started doing shows there.
Yeah.
And now it's a whole separate building, so he can have his shed back for the cars. I think he's
Right.
happy about
And then
that.
they bought the property just not too far from there and built this really amazingly state-of-the-art type
and
venue that's just great.
and went in with Jeff and Mindy.
Yep, Stevens.
And I mean, they were really there since the beginning. They were at the party.
Yeah, they were. That is. They were part of. Yeah, it was a
They were really
partnership.
there, but like
That's true.
ever since they've built this new building, and ever since that cooperation has really blossomed, and it's really just turned into this really cool Midwest juke joint. You know, like I really love it's out here in the country. I think it's on like Old Tobacco Road or something crazy. Like
it's off of the old K61.
Highway 60.
Yeah, old 61. They're out by Hutchinson. Not Hutch is what they call it, but Hutchinson, Kansas. And it's just like you said. It's unique. It's kind of iconic now. It's getting a really great reputation because they bring in some great regional acts, but they also bring in some great touring acts from out of state, from Florida. Like Mike Zito and Albert Castillo. Alistair Green from Texas, from Houston now. Austin. He's in Austin.
And of course
now.
the Midwest crew, Amanda Fish, Nick Schneblin, Chris Lager. We're going to have some of those
Terry
guys.
Quiet Man.
Terry Quiet, of course, yes. We played there a whole bunch.
Speaking of Chris Lager, that's a show that's coming up December 14th.
That'll be awesome.
Check that out, everybody. You can find out everything what's going on at the Red Shed. You can find them on Facebook, and also you can find them on the internet.
And if you haven't seen Chris, go check him out. He's awesome. And then we're playing. On New Year's
to kick the new year off, to end this wonderful year and kick off the new year. Yeah, we're playing New Year's Eve at the Red Shed, and we got our great friend Kurt Allen out of Kansas City coming down to join us for the night. And a couple other surprises are in the works, too. So it's going to be fun. Also, what's really neat, what I like about this show that we're going to do, we've talked about this with the band, is that, we don't want it to just be another Orphan John the Band and show. So you're going to get all that exciting stuff going on. But we're going to throw in some things because it is a special New Year's Eve party.
Yep.
So we're going to throw in some stuff that I guarantee a lot of people have never heard us do.
Do a lot of Creed and Five Finger Death Punch.
Yeah, something like that. Foo Fighters.
Yeah, maybe.
I think, and some...
Adele. Colby's going to sing Adele.
I think, or maybe Fleetwood Mac, because, he is such a fan of Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles. It probably very likely he'll probably do that. I'm thinking.
That's what I think. So, yeah, go check out the Red Shed.
Yes, please.
And support all they got going on. Salty's Barbecue. So I don't know them. They're out in Baco, and I haven't eaten the barbecue, but I hear great things.
Oh yeah, it was on that Guy Fieri.
Oh yeah, the like Diners, Drive-Ins, Dives.
That's
style.
it.
Yeah.
They were on that. They came in a couple of years ago and filmed an episode there. Yes, Jeff Salter's a good friend of mine. We go back all the way to my high school days, his high school days. And we were both in high school in our high school days. But anyways, great guy, and his whole family is a wonderful people, and Jeff is so supportive of everything going on in the community. And his barbecue establishment, he started on Rosedale Highway, which is the original. It's still there. That's the one that's featured in that drive-in.
Yeah, you have to check out the original.
The original, right? And then the new one is on White Lane, his other establishment. It's been there for a few years now, and it's just great. They do car shows and stuff like that on every Friday during the spring on through the summer and stuff, special stuff like that. And he's one of the main cats that help out with our annual Covenant Community Concert for aged out foster youth of Kern County there in Bakersfield, my hometown, which is Covenant Coffee is part of that too. Yeah. Good friends of mine over there at Covenant Community.
They were on the podcast actually, episode 2.
Episode 2, yes, Randy Martin and them. So yeah, Jeff's a great guy. This is a great barbecue place. It's very popular. People travel even from Los Angeles, Southern California, Northern California. They come down and they stop in there. So it's just go out there and show them some love.
Destination barbecue.
It is.
I like that.
It is, and it's well worth it. And just go out there and see Jeff and his team and tell them that Orphan John and Aaron said hi here from Kansas, Wichita, Kansas. So that's one of our sponsors. And we'll get to the other one a little bit later. We got another one, but we'll dive into him or that one after we get into this episode. Because first we're gonna deal with the depressing stuff.
Oh, okay.
We'll deal with the depressing stuff, and then we'll get into the more uplifting things about my youth during this next this episode we're diving into.
Awesome. So episode 4, we left off in 3rd grade year. Mm-hmm. You were at the DeGiorgio School.
Yes.
By Arvin, California.
Right. And Mrs. Anderson was my 3rd grade teacher, and she was not a very pleasant woman. And so if you want to know all about that, just check us out in episode 3, which is, episode 4.
Yeah, episode 4.
Episode 4, which is the one
we're 5 today.
Right before this one. The one right before this one. This is 5. Yeah, so now, now we're going to delve into, so just to go back and just reacquaint anybody that maybe for the first time they're checking out this podcast. This is my story. Everybody has a story. This is mine. They call me Orphan John because I was an orphan. That's how that came about. And also what I'm doing is I wanted to do this because of a couple of reasons. One, people are always asking me about writing a book. I don't have time to write a book. So this is a quick and easy way, I think, to tell my story. Plus, it's also a way to delve into some of the things that foster youth, because I was a foster child, deal with. And you deal with foster youth because you and Justin, you adopted your son, who was in the system for a long time.
We're a lot newer at it. I mean, it took us 2 years to adopt Spencer.
Right.
But he's probably 3 years with us now. Mm-hmm. It's the longest he's ever been anywhere.
Right. Yeah. So we want to discuss those things that go on. And also the other reason is because I want to give something to my children and my grandbabies and generations down the line as to how, and that's what we're going to delve into in this episode, because up to this 4th grade, I was still a Sarnowski, which is what I was born as, Johnny William Sarnowski. This episode we go into how I became an English, so we'll get into that too. But to start things off, this is where we're at. I'm in 4th grade, fixing to go in. My 4th grade teacher was Mrs. Taylor, sweet lady. She's polar opposite of Mrs. Anderson. She was very kind, and understanding for this little 10-year-old boy. I was 10 years old at that time. And so there were some things that when I still had my chores at home in my foster home. I still had my chores I did daily.
Which was a lot. It sounded like you had just kind of a lot.
It was nonstop. Yeah. There was no going outside to play. There was no really much of a very enjoyable childhood in that sense. It's just the way it was. We were just, Clarence and I, my older brother, we were basically, I would say, it's almost like purchase servants, and that's all we did, chores. And so that was our life, day in and day out, constantly, week after week after week. And then there was, the continuous physical abuse and mental abuse that we both dealt with from our foster mother. So in order for me to escape it, her mother, Geneva, which we all called her Granny, would let us come and spend the night. And I would basically, I went from the frying pan into the fire in that situation.
Yeah. Well, I think you accepted a different scenario just because it was different. From what you told me, it seems like that was just another style of hell.
Yeah, it was, and it was just for me, for a child, it was a means to escape. Because when I spent the night over at Granny's house on the weekend, I wasn't doing all those chores. It wasn't sun up to sundown. Yeah. Hardly ever got to watch TV. See, there's a lot of things there. When I was a child, we just didn't get to do in the house. We didn't watch TV hardly at all, and never got to go outside and play. I think maybe a handful of times I made it outside to play for just a little bit. It was just nothing but chores. So when the opportunity arose that I could leave that situation and go to another situation, even though it was a different kind of abuse and hell on earth for me, it was still a change of scenery. Yeah. And as much as it sucked, as a 10-year-old, you're not thinking of it. You're just not thinking, analyzing. None of that enters your mind. It's just, hey, okay, Granny's asked if we want to spend the night. Yes, I'll spend the night. And so there was some really crazy stuff that took place in her house consistently too. One of them being, give me some examples. So she loved watching the late night old 60s, like the early 60s, mid 60s horror flicks, the B movies.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So it wasn't even the Vincent Price stuff. This was like just really, I don't know. I don't even think it was Ed Wood stuff.
Yeah, there was just some bunch weird of stuff. Just really crappy horror.
It was, and it would come on late at night. The effects were
bad, and the acting was terrible.
But for a 10-year-old, it was still pretty real, and it was extremely scary. And she would make us. So I don't even remember Clarence even spending the night with me. Now that I think about it, I don't think he did. I think it was just because I do not remember being with us. Or it might have been she rotated. Maybe he spent the night sometimes and I did. I can't remember for sure, but I know I don't remember him ever being with me there. So she would sit on her couch late at night and have her TV on, and this black and white horror flick would be going, and I'd start getting scared, and she could see, I'm doing the old covering the eyes and peeking through, and everything, and she would slap me and make me watch it, and just to scare the shit out of me. Now she's also the one, remember in a previous episode I talked about when I went to the Kern County Fair. And she discovered I was scared of werewolves all that crap happened. So knowing this, having knowledge of this, and I don't understand what her mentality was that she got, I don't know, her rocks off or how you want to put it, her jollies by tormenting me. But I guess
and it seemed to be like that was almost a philosophy back in the day, like I'll toughen you up.
Maybe that was it. That was it. You little snot-nosed, kid.
Yeah, because there's always like, oh, it'll be good for you.
Yeah.
No, dude, it's trauma is what it is.
You know what I mean? You're right. And so that would take place, and it was just a normal routine. And I can't explain why I always went there, knowing that this was going to take place. It always took place. It was just that want to get out of this house and get some release from all this stuff I'm dealing with here. So what she would do is we watch these horror stories, these movies, and then she'd say, "Oh, did you hear that?" It's always the same thing scenario. Yeah. Did you hear that? No. Oh, Johnny, listen. Yeah, I hear it. You hear that? It's like, I don't hear anything. And she would make me get up and go out on the front porch. No porch light.
Check what that sound was.
Find out what that is. No porch light. Pitch dark. And I get on that porch. It's an old house. It's an old house. So rickety and all that. And you get out there and making noises on its own. Yeah. And she would make me go out, and then she'd say, "Go around the back and see what that is." And I didn't want to. I would pitch a fit, and she'd, threaten to beat my butt. So I would. So I take off and I go around, and it happened almost like clockwork every time. Her son, David, would hang out in this old shed. It was just, I don't know, probably 6 foot by 6 foot in diameter, just old wooden shed in the very back of her house, and he would hang out there, and I knew. I mean, I'm running as fast as I possibly can to get through this, and I knew he was going to come out, and boom, he would come out and just scream and holler at me. A lot of times he would have masks on, from Halloween masks, stuff like that, just to scare the crap out of me. And that's just how it was. I mean, it's just crazy when I look back at it, and then I make it back in the house, and and then settle down and hope I don't have to go outside again.
Well, it is crazy looking back on it, and we just know so much more about child psychology and childhood development and things. I mean, we know more about it, so that's, I think, why it looks crazy looking back. We're like, what were you thinking? But
it's one of those things. And then another thing she would do is when I'd go to bed, so the house was situated to where you had, if you walked in, you had the living room, and then off to this side, to the left, would be her room, and then you go through her room to get to the back room, and there was a bathroom in the back. If you went from the living room to your right a little bit, you'd go into the dining room kitchen area, and then out the back to the washroom. So I always had to sleep in that back room by myself, and that scared the crap out of me too. Yeah. I just after all of this going on and seeing these movies and
now you're just left alone.
It did, yeah. And then just like, okay, go to bed. I'm in there all by myself. Well, she used to live in her room, and there were times that she would get up in the middle of the night, and she had this skull, those little figurine skulls you can get. Yeah. To this day, people can get them. She put a candle in it, lit that candle, and she would hold it and walk towards the back, to that back room where I was at, and she would be moaning, carrying on. And me, I know it's her, and I have the covers pulled over my head like I would because I'm scared to death, and I could see through the knitting that skull all lit up.
Right.
And looked like it was floating in the room. Again, for a 10-year-old, it scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah, right before you go to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, here's the last thing to put in your mind before you
Yeah, it basically, let's get you primed by watching these movies. Now we'll get you really going. We're going to make you go outside, and we're going to scare the crap out of you. Now you're going to go to bed. Yeah. And like I said, it was just, I don't understand the mentality of a person that would do that to a child. That's the stuff that to this day, I would come unglued. I would just be infuriated if I knew of any child, whether I knew the child personally or didn't, of any child that was in my vicinity being treated that way. I would just, I seriously would probably wind up in jail because I would be hurting somebody, because I connect and remember that fear and the fact that there's nothing you can do. There's no way of getting out of this. There's no way of defending yourself. You have no control. You're just subjected to this immense torment. And I remember getting up in the morning, and she would bring it up about the ghost, because she would tell before I go to bed. That was how she would get set up. There's a ghost. A woman died in this house. Right. All of that things. There was a movie. Okay, there was a movie called Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. Do you remember that? It was Betty Davis, and I want to say Joan Crawford. Yeah, I think Joan Crawford.
So this is an old movie.
This is an old movie, and Bruce Dern. This is when Bruce Dern was young. To this day, I remember this. There's a famous old movie that was actually considered by critics one of the best ever made by Betty Davis. Wow. Anyway, so there's a scene where Joan Crawford, she's her sister, and she's tormenting her baby Jane or whatever, in Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte. Anyways, She ends up cutting off Bruce Dern's hands in this movie. It's a black and white. Wow. And I had to watch that movie. To this day, I remember those scenes. Wow. That was part of what scared the crap out of me. So I'm dealing with this skull. This stuff's going on. I'm petrified. And I won't get out of the bed, won't move, or anything again. I'm just stiff as a board to where my muscles were aching, my shoulders and all that. And that's just how it was, you know, and day by day. Other things she would do. And I'm only going to discuss this in this episode because I don't want to delve into it anymore after this one. That was another thing she would do. She loved tormenting me because I couldn't speak right.
Oh, like a speech.
I had a very bad speech impediment when I was a child. You know, because nobody took the time to teach me how to pronounce things.
Oh, okay. So it was like a pronunciation.
It was a pronunciation.
It wasn't like a whisper, a stutter.
No, not that I know. When that was just I couldn't. I would just was not that I was lazy. I was just never taught to enunciate real well. And a typical thing like any kid, spaghetti.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't say spaghetti.
It's spaghetti.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I couldn't say it. What was the other one I would say? Instead of Popeye, I'd say pie. And that would infuriate her.
Infuriation. That's like such a weird reaction.
Yeah, it would be. Oh yeah. And so we'd have these episodes where I'm in the kitchen table, dining room table, whatever, in the kitchen, and she would be on me about saying it right. You know, say it right. And if I wouldn't say it right, then I'd get a swat. And she would never. This is the thing. She would never tell me, no, this is the way you say it. Listen to me.
Right.
You say spaghetti.
Don't take the time to actually work with you on the problem.
Would not. I had to figure it out on my own. That was the challenge. And it would turn into this unending hour-long or more episode where I'm just beside myself because I can't say it right, and I'm getting beat because every time I don't say it right, I get a swat.
That's crazy.
One of the other things she loved to do was, to this day, I can't stand them, and I won't eat them. I can't even stand the way they smell, is fried green tomatoes.
Yeah.
Because they were Okies, so they do a lot of that stuff, the chocolate gravy and
See, that sounds
pork,
like Arkansas to
pork,
me.
Yeah, salt pork. Like, well, it could be. Yeah, it could be.
Arkansas.
Yeah, it could be Arkansas. The salt pork for breakfast and all that stuff. Well,
red eye gravy.
She would fix these fried green tomatoes, and they'd be sliced. They'd be I remember they'd be on the platter. And when you fry them, if you look, they're still green, but you know I think they put them in batter like cornmeal, if I remember right. And then
like that.
The inside where the seeds were and the meat would turn brown, and would have a certain kind of, I don't know, look to them.
A little pattern on there.
Right, a pattern. And so she would tell me that was a worm, that those were worms. And so set me up already.
Like, I don't like them now.
And I didn't like the way they tasted anyways, and she would make me eat them until I'd puke. And that's just the way she was. And it's just the craziest thing how these people can be that way. And that's what I dealt with. But
makes you wonder what drives that behavior. Like,
I don't know. I don't understand.
Did that happen to her? Was she?
That one I don't know.
Like I'm saying, it is kind of a cultural thing. Like the culture of the 1950s, we'll say,
maybe
was a lot different. You know what I mean? It was like toughen you up, and we'll make a man of you yet, and all this really weird shit.
There's one thing about toughen you up, but then there's got to be compassion. You know, when a child,
well, yeah, it has
to
be balanced,
you got to show some some compassion when it's obvious that the child's beside himself in tears and just freaking out because he doesn't.
The tough love at that point,
but it never happened.
That's wild.
And so that that's how she would do, and And like I said, I was just a glutton for punishment. It was that was life. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Never being in a family where I had a mom and dad from the get-go to know what a family's like, to have some of that foundation in my psyche as a child. This was just life. That was what life was. To me, this is the way it is. This is being a child. And it was kind of crazy. But... yeah, I made it through, man. I made it through, and to this day, I never ever scared my children. That was a rule of thumb. Yep. When I had my firstborn, and then Brooke was born, Heather, June, Brooke, and Clay. I made up my mind they would never ever know what it's like to be surprised, to scare them, or any of that. I just wouldn't do it.
And see, Spencer was the one that brought that shit to our house.
Right.
You know, yeah.
Well, he probably was done that way. Probably, truth be known.
He brought it on, man. Like it wasn't. I mean, it was like a couple weeks after he started really getting comfortable that was the thing. You know, I'd come in and I'd be like, "Babe, where's Spencer at?" You know, and he'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. He's around here somewhere."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Oh, okay, I get it. No, all right, now I'm looking for him, and he'd be hiding behind it. And he's pretty tiny. He can hide, man.
Yeah, he is.
Like he's small. He can hide good. It scared the crap out of me a bunch of times.
But he's doing it playfully.
Yeah,
He's doing just a
right.
Surprise you just because, hey, look what I can do. I snuck up on you, or you didn't expect it, kind of thing.
And on the horror movie stuff, he'll try to watch them with me sometimes. You know, like, because I like scary movies, especially around Halloween time. I'm like, let's get into this. You know, let's go.
Not me.
And so I'll stay up some nights and watch that, and he'll try to come down and like, oh, I just can't sleep, Dad. I don't know what's wrong. Like, no, if you want to hang out, come on, hang out. It's okay, you know. And I'm like, do you want me to turn this? And he's like, no, I like this stuff. Okay, you know. And it won't be too long till he's doing like what you was talking about. He's all cuddled up, kind of doing the.
But you're not forcing him. Like, put your hands down. No. You know, you want to see this. You want whatever.
Yeah,
right?
And I'll bring him in and be like, hey, you know, this isn't real.
Right.
This is like.
Yeah. See, there's the difference too.
Okay.
Is that you care about him? You love your child.
Yeah. This is entertaining.
Yes.
To me.
And to this day, I'm not into horror movies. I mean, I like. I've gotten to where I like the supernatural thrillers.
There you go.
Like
that's different.
What's that movie that came out with Nicole Kidman?
It's more like psychological. At that,
yeah, that stuff like The Sixth Sense, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's still surprising when the girl's under the bed and all that.
You see dead people.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a story there. I cannot stand slasher movies. I will not.
Or
watch,
just like straight up gore.
Yeah, I won't watch Friday the 13th. I've seen it some of a little bit. Don't care. Any of those. You know, the Pinhead guy character from whatever that movie was from. What was the other one?
One of my favorites,
yeah, that one. What's the other one? Elm Street thing, the third Nightmare on Elm
Nightmare
Street.
on Elm Street.
None
Friday
of that
15th,
stuff appeals to me. None of it.
Halloween.
And I get that there are people that like it. Okay, for me mentally, I just can't see what's entertaining about it.
And I don't go to a haunted house.
Yeah, I don't either.
When I was about 16, 17, you know.
Yeah.
Try to go to a haunted house, be cool with my friends.
Right.
You know, man, I like come so
close to hurting.
Man, yeah. I like it's a responsibility. If you surprise me, man, you might catch a right.
Yeah, you might. I might
just
surprise you back.
Just real quick, and I ain't thinking about it. It's just kind of
I'm the same way. There's nothing about that. It's like life's scary as it is.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like I always said, life's so unpredictable.
And you got me into a situation.
You got me to that.
Yeah, you got me there. I'm expecting these things to pop out now, so now I'm on edge.
Right.
You know
it's going to happen. Just when.
It happened. It happened like 3 or 4 times in that one haunted house where I was just like, okay.
I think that back in the day in Bakersfield, I don't think they still have it because I haven't been there for a few years, and I don't even remember even when I was still there. They used to have this thing called what was it called? Is every Halloween, crap. This one I wish Stella was here because she could tell me exactly what it's called. It's a haunted house thing put out every year. Scream in the Dark. That's what it's called. Scream in the Dark. And I actually went one year with a girlfriend I had at the time. I was a junior in high school, and I went. And of course, I wasn't scared because to me it was like I knew. I mean, what I went through as a child, this is nothing. You know, I knew all this stuff was just. And to this day, you can't really scare me. And I have no problem walking anywhere by myself in the dark. You can ask Stella. I have traversed across Bakersfield on a drunk stupor because I was irritated with her because she hadn't showed up downtown Bakersfield to pick me up yet. And I'm like, okay, I'm tired of waiting. I'm leaving. And I just take off and walk like 9 miles to way out in southwest Bakersfield. And I just, you know. But anyways, I got over all of that when I was in high school because I lived out in the country, out in Irvine, California, and I lived in a farmhouse about a mile away from the high school, and I'd have to walk to the high school through great vineyards and orchards and stuff. And you get over that stuff because then you realize, and this is what I always I told my children is that, look, there's nothing really in the dark that isn't in the light. You just can't see it. It's nothing there. And so don't be afraid of what you can't see right now. I mean, your eyes will get adjusted and you'll be okay. And I'm not scared of the dark or nothing like that. Of course, I haven't been for years and years. But as a 10-year-old, I was petrified.
Yeah.
Really bad. But so then I'm in 4th grade now. I'm in school. And this is when things got better for me in school-wise. Things were still shitty at home. But there was somewhat of it's just like I've always said, it's amazing to me when I look back. I'm sure you can do the same. Look back and you see those little roadblocks in life. You see those little milestones, you can call them.
Yeah,
those little spots in your journey where you were nudged to go in this certain direction. And then years later, you're like, I'm so glad that happened.
Yeah.
and that's what happened. One of the things I remember in 4th grade. So Mrs. Taylor, love her to death. She was such a sweet lady. And so during my 4th grade year was 75. It started in the fall. In 76 in the spring. So 1976 was the bicentennial of our great nation. In 1976.
They made a special quarter.
Yeah, everything. And so the Georgia school decided that they were going to put on a bicentennial program. And for this program that we did, it was a telling of the history of our nation. So there was different outfits worn. Some of the kids were dressed as Native Americans. Some of the kids were dressed as settlers, as pilgrims. And you would have these different scenes throughout this program and that told the story of our nation, the birth of the nation, how it went. And so went all the way to the present time. And they had asked me, Mrs. Taylor and Mrs. Ballou. Mrs. Ballou was the 1st grade teacher, and she was also over it. So Mrs. Taylor, Mrs. Ballou, and might have been some other teachers, but I do remember those two. Anyways, they picked me to be the MC. Now, again, you got a kid, doesn't speak really well.
Right.
And to this point, doesn't feel like he belongs in anything. With anybody, is a part of anything, with anybody, accepted it all. I don't know what it was that those two teachers, my 4th grade teacher and Mrs. Ballou, the 1st grade teacher, seen in this 10-year-old boy, that they decided he would make a good MC. And so they picked me, they coached me, and I wore an outfit. I was Uncle Sam. So Uncle Sam was the MC of this program. And we'll share some pictures of that.
Nice.
And so that was what I guess you can say was the first time. Well, it was the first time, but that's probably maybe that was the little seed that was planted that caused me to become eventually the orphan John I am as a singer.
Yeah. If you found some kind of acceptance on stage at an early age, man, I get it. I understand the pathology there. You know,
I think so. Because going out and us doing shows. We love the music we write. We love the music we play. The biggest reward for me personally is the connection with the audience and meeting new people.
Yeah.
And going to cities I never imagined I'd go to, and I've said it before. I love that. The music's great, and I love that, obviously. We're telling my story in these songs. But it's also just the fact that, I think that when I was the MC of the Bicentennial program for the Georgia School in 1976, there was that tiny seed that was planted in my mind and in my heart that this was neat. I'm telling these stories, and I'd set up. What I do is I'd introduce the next scene or next act. That one had square dancing and everything. There's a picture that I brought that I want to share because Arthur Burt, who is my best friend, he's in the picture, which is really cool. And they're doing square dancing, and you can see in the picture that they're doing square dancing. But that was something that was positive. With all the stuff going on at home, and again, teachers, when you're going through what you're going through, I went through, I never told my teachers, I never said anything to anybody. Yeah. Arthur knew, Ricky Carrillo knew, just a few, just those, I think that was it. They ever knew what was going on in my household. Children were, that was, the old be seen, not heard kind of, that was that generation. Oh, yeah. But that was a cool little thing, and I enjoyed it. I remember so that was a little positive deal. And then towards the end of my 4th grade year, a huge event in my life took place. that changed the direction of who I am as a person, and that was Clarence and I were adopted.
Yeah.
By Gary and Jessie English.
So both you and Clarence were now Englishes.
Mm-hmm. That's when
amazing.
And I remember this day. I remember going into the judge's chambers, and I remember the judge saying to me that I was old enough. Well, he asked me if I wanted to be adopted. I remember that. Do you want Gary and Jessie English to be your parents? And I remember saying yes. And he said, okay, young man, what do you want your name to be? And he asked my brother Clarence the same thing. Well, I'm 10 years old. I'm not thinking anything about it. I'm just Johnny William English. It was Johnny William Sarnowski, so Johnny William English. Yeah. And, of course, Clarence changed his from Clarence Sylvester Sarnowski to Clarence Marvin English, because Marvin was our adopted dad, Gary's middle name, Gary Marvin, which was our adopted grandfather, his dad's first name, Marvin, Marvin English. So Clarence changed his to Clarence Marvin. I just kept mine as Johnny William. And then, of course, years later, I find out that the band that was a sperm donor, I was named after him. It's on the birth certificate and everything. And then I look back and go, man, I wish I had known that or had the mentality to say, nope, I don't want that name.
Right.
Because then I would have had the name that I go by now, which is John, Jon. I would have had Jonathan because I like Jonathan. My son, his name is John, Jon, John Clayton Storm English. And I actually would have went with Jonathan Storm English. Just because it sounds cool to me.
Yeah. Spencer wanted to be Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
There you go.
And
do you smell what he's cooking?
I said, there's already a Dwayne
awesome.
"The Rock" Johnson.
Awesome.
I said, you should be John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. That's who you should be. And he didn't want to do that either. So
he could say that's my name too.
Yeah, I was trying to make him. I was trying to like suggest things like Danger could be your middle name.
Danger.
You could like literally say Danger's my middle name.
Right.
Like I'm like, this is a great opportunity. I wish I had when I was a kid.
Right. Well, now
change my name to whatever it is. That'd be great.
Yeah, people have different names that you never would have imagined. I mean, there's some really.
So he's Spencer Dwayne Underwood.
That's a good name.
Yeah, and Dwayne is Justin's middle name.
Awesome.
So like worked out good.
Yes.
We were able to say, okay, you can keep the Dwayne part of The Rock Johnson if you want, because it's, that makes sense in the family.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's way cool. Well, so I think it's time we kind of tell everybody about one of our other sponsors.
Yeah. Now, why did we wait? Why did we wait?
Because I wanted to.
Just okay.
Yeah, break it up. So just write them on. Plus, this is a way if we got people enthralled and they're sitting on the edge of their seat.
Yeah, there you go.
Then if we talk about this sponsor, they might go, ooh, listen to this. So another sponsor of ours that we're happy about having on board is the IOF Entertainment.
And this is another, isn't it a Jeff Stevens?
It's another Jeff Stevens thing. Our brother Jeff Stevens, and we love him to death.
But this is, what would you say this is, like a, really like party facilitation?
Yes.
Okay? Like he can bring you bands.
Yes.
He does inflatables for like kids' parties.
It's inflatables. He does production, so it would be lighting, stage, sound, all that. Ooh, yes. I'll have another. They provide that. They also, this is interesting, they travel anywhere.
Really?
I was always under an impression by my own doing
I guess I was
that
too.
they were local, Wichita, Sedgwick County, Reno County, where they're at, that kind of thing, just, like close-knit. No, they go into Iowa, they go into Nebraska, Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas. Yeah, they travel, and they do a lot with the fairs, the county fairs, the state fairs. Yeah. They work with the Kansas State Fair itself every year, and so they provide all of these. And they also, and what's neat is that Jeff's told me this, that they will meet whatever budget. They will work with you. So if you want to have a really neat party for your grandkids' birthday, or for your child's birthday, or for anniversary,
come with a decent idea of a budget, okay? Because I mean, you are talking about like an upper tier party now, okay?
Right,
like we're talking about.
He's not going to let anybody take advantage of it, but he will work with. He's told me they'll work with you on your budget to make your dream come true. It's really neat, and they, like I said, they travel, they set it up. like these inflatables, they go out, they set them up, and they go down, break them down, and all this stuff. And
Jeff bounces in each one personally.
He does to make sure that it's going to meet the requirements.
Make sure it bounces right.
Velocity.
Yeah, make sure it meets the requirements of
make sure that
kids everywhere.
Right, exactly. And so check them out, IOF Entertainment, and we'll have to include the contact numbers because there's phone numbers to these places. The IOF does not have a website; they have an email, and so we need to get that out there too. But that's it's for all your entertainment needs. It's really neat. It's set up that they do, and they're great people. Jeff's got a great crew that go out and everything. It's just you can't beat them. We love Jeff. He's a good guy, and we really appreciate him sponsoring our little podcast here, Backseat Therapy.
Definitely.
Which that's the first time I mentioned the name of our podcast this evening. Wow.
Yeah, Backseat Therapy.
Backseat Therapy.
Care to delve in, or you want to gloss over it?
What, the Backseat Therapy part?
Yeah. So basically,
yeah, it's
we're not doctors of psychology or any kind of professional in that realm at all. But we have experience, right? I guess we have our impressions, on things. We between the two of us kind of have a span of, what was happening, what's currently happening,
right. Right. I mean,
I feel like we can talk about.
I said earlier, you started. You're dealing with the system, and when you had Spencer arrive, when you got Spencer, and then all those 2 or 3 years, or whatever, and that you dealt with that. I was in the system from birth until I was 10, because when I was adopted, that's when eventually the system left me. But so there's a lot of experience there. And with the Backseat Therapy, that was something that my oldest daughter came up with years and years ago. And her philosophy the idea of it is how you have people that are backseat drivers that are always trying to tell you how to drive. Well, there's those people in your life that's trying to tell you how to live your life or what you're doing wrong and how you got to change this. And I just thought that was a unique name or title. And I like that. And so I decided that's what we're going to call the podcast because, we're not psychologists. We don't have PhDs or we're highly educated in that sense, but we're highly educated in life experiences. And
I can tell you some stories.
As a foster kid, I understand totally why a lot of these kids go in the direction they go and why they feel the way they felt because that's how I felt. And when you're in a situation I was as a child, the only reason why I didn't turn into something really hellacious in society was because of those little steps like that. And, I had my best friend Arthur Burt. That was a saving grace at the right time when I was a kid. And then you had the Mrs. Taylor. You had these wonderful people. And the last one I wanted to talk about before we close out this episode is somebody that's dear to a lot of the DeGiorgio students from it would be mid-'70s until the mid-'90s, I think. And that is the librarian at DeGiorgio School, Mary Kasinger, Mrs. Kasinger. And the reason I wanted to bring her up because she was such a sweet lady, and she became the librarian the year I was in 10th grade. That was her first year. Her daughters, Anne and Rebecca, are good friends of mine. Rebecca is a teacher at DeGiorgio School to this day.
Oh, wow.
And she's the one that's in the pictures that you're seeing of me at the Bicentennial and everything that's been provided. She's the one that gave those to me because her mother
had them.
She was like she was a recorder of events at DeGiorgio.
Beautiful.
And her mother she showed this to me last time I was back in September. I was in my hometown for a little while. I went out and visited with Becky out there at my alma mater, DeGiorgio School, just to walk the halls and see everything and relive some of that stuff. It's like, wow, bringing back memories. Yeah,
took you back. You're like,
there was some. Yeah, it was crazy. That went in that 3rd grade class, and then went in the 4th grade class, which is the class that Becky's in. She's not a 4th grade teacher. I can't remember I can't remember which class, but she's in that class that was. No, she's in the class that was the library. Anyways, I'm getting off. But her mother, kept a lot of photo books of all of these. So it was neat to open up and see all
awesome.
these. Yeah, my class, see if functions I was in, my classmates were in, upperclassmen were in, lowerclassmen were in, and there's just like this area of time that brings back memories. 'Cause I see these pictures and I remember these people. I remember these students that some of them were my friends, and some are my friends to this very day, like Becky. So the thing about Mrs. Kasinger that really was pivotal when I was a 10-year-old dealing with all the crazy shit at home and feeling like a worthless piece of crap every day was you had the positive influence of Mrs. Taylor, but Mrs. Kasinger introduced me to reading. Now, up until I was in 4th grade, I was what was referred to as a retard. That
was the term back in the day.
That was the term.
Yeah, that was the term back in the day.
I was retarded. I went to so many psychiatrists so many times because that's what the system required, because I would do stupid stuff at school, which I alluded to in the previous episode, some of the stuff I would do. And I'm not going to delve into everything, but I would do some really, really nutty, crazy crap. And they're like, Johnny's got some mental issues. He's retarded and all this stuff. So I would act out that way. It was my way, I guess you can say, of dealing with the shit I was dealing with at home, was to be this nutcase at school.
Well, that there's a thing of like, man, if you're going to put me in that boat anyway, you know what I mean? I might as well act the part because I just got given a huge freedom.
Yeah.
You know, I can now act any way I want, and you still call me.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing going to change. Like, I'm just that stupid, retarded boy. So Mrs. Kasinger, I remember her, you know, we'd have library time. So the class would go to the library. And I remember she came up to me and asked me what kind of books do I like to read. Well, there wasn't any I could think of because I didn't read. And so she introduced me to this series. To this day, I was talking to Stella about this a few days ago. To this very day, I remember this series. And I think they made a movie out of it, wasn't really online with the actual series in the book. But the book was called Dark is Rising. The Dark is Rising, if I remember right. It's by Susan Cooper. She's a famous child author. And she started this series I seen in 1966 and finished it in 73. So 2 years or 3 years later, I'm introduced to this one book. And I remember Mrs. Kasinger saying, I think you'll like this book. She took it off the shelf and gave it to me. And I went over and I sat down and started reading it. I literally got hooked on this. And it's like your Harry Potter type, storyline in that sense. It's good and evil. There's a boy, he just turned, it was his 11th birthday, and when he turned 11, he started having these events happen in his life. He went to visit his grandparents in Wales. I remember that. So he's Welsh, his grandparents are Welsh. He's visiting, he turns 11, and he starts hearing this sound, and he goes out trying to find out where the sound's coming from, and he goes on, and it winds up being this adventure where he's called, I think it's the Old Ones or something like that. But he's on the good side. He's like the descendant of these great fighters and warriors of good versus the evil. And it's called, The Darkness Rising, Undersea, Overland, I think was another book. It's like a 5-part series. Anyways, she introduced me to that, and I got so hooked on it. And by reading, it got my mind to where, it's like, you delve into this, and I could escape from this other stuff.
Yeah.
At the same time, it's helping my mind, to let go of stuff and not be an idiot. And so all this stuff starts working, and that was the influence that Mrs. Kasinger had. Another book she introduced me to, and you might have heard this one. It's called Encyclopedia Brown.
What?
Encyclopedia Brown.
No.
You never heard that?
No.
Oh, wow.
Encyclopedia Brown.
Yep.
I heard it. Encyclopedia Britannica.
Right. No, this Encyclopedia Brown was a boy that was a detective. He was a boy detective, and they called him Encyclopedia Brown because he was so smart, and he was like Columbo, but as a boy, he could figure things out, and there's these little books. I think they were only so thick, But there were several books. Just look at it, Google it, Encyclopedia Brown, and I fell in love with that book too. And I got to where I started reading it a lot because of that. And that was a huge thing. And Mrs. Kasinger was so sweet. She was such a sweet lady, and everybody, all the other students loved her, and everything. And so that was a huge influence. And to this day I'm grateful that she came into my life at that time as an important part of my life that I needed that little nudge, a direction, like, hey, you ever thought about reading? Do you read? Well, not really. Well, here's something I think you might like.
Yeah. So I'm looking for that for Spencer right now, because he, in the last year maybe, he's come up about a grade and a half level in reading. Like, he's really shot up in his reading. He's done really good, and I really want to encourage that. But yeah, I'm looking for something like that. So so maybe that's the way.
Yeah, because I mean, it's fantasy. It's like I said, it's kind of like Harry Potter before Harry Potter arrived. It's not about. It's about sorcery. It's a good versus evil story. Yeah. And I want to say the kid's name was, what was the name? Will. I think his name was Will, if I remember right. I remember some of it. But I remember I just fell in love with that book, and I read that one. I read the next one and the next one, and so that was important. That was very important to finish up my fourth grade year, the Bicentennial, Mrs. Taylor having her as my teacher, and then Mrs. Kasinger introducing me to reading, to books, and falling in love with reading. It does make a big difference for a child that's feeling out of place and alone and everything. You can get lost in that in a good way. Yeah. And it does help the mind. It helps the mind tremendously to read.
Well, imagination.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's kind of like a catalyst for the songwriting,
Yeah.
It's like all that stuff, little seeds planted.
So you said earlier that they had considered you retarded when you came in there.
They actually said I was.
They told me. They told me the same thing about Spencer.
Yep.
And this year, we were able to take intellectual disability off of his paperwork.
Awesome.
He's not retarded. He has learned, and he has gained.
I think a lot of times they're smarter.
Well,
then
how are you going to know if you keep the kid down in this like?
Yeah. Well, it's easy to maintain them.
Yeah.
Keep them maintained. We just keep them right here.
Yeah. But like, advocating for him and working with people that affect him and trying to make things better for him.
Right.
Yeah. He's gained something like 20 IQ points.
That's awesome.
Like we're in the rough area there. We've taken intellectual disabilities off of the plate. He's come up so much in reading, and therapy's gone from like every week to like whenever he needs it.
Right.
He used to have a mental health worker that would come by once a week and grab him and go take him into social situations to gauge his social.
To observe him.
Yeah. Yeah, to observe him, and it'd be something like let's just
and
go
he
to the
knows
park.
He's being observed.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm a guinea pig.
Well, to him it was just I get to go out and I get to go do stuff with
right.
This guy,
Yeah.
And they had a cool relationship. He was awesome. He came to the court hearing when he was adopted, even after we graduated his program.
Right. Awesome. Well, it's everybody's different. Every child deals with things differently,
exactly.
And depending on what's going on at home,
and that's what makes it so hard.
The house, and then
that's what makes it so hard for a system to try to help these kids,
right?
Because it's not these kids, man. It's like you got in this town, you got 1,200 individual cases. Man.
Right,
you don't have these kids.
Yeah,
you have 1,200 individual cases.
Exactly, and that is the only. That's the part that sucks about the system is they mean well. They do. I mean, there are sincere people that want to help
and
children
and they are trying.
That have been neglected and abused and abandoned, and they try.
But their approach
is
to standardize everything and then run kids through the mill.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, well, this is the course of action that our board has decided to allow and pay for these professionals to.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's cookie cutter.
Yeah, and these kids come in and be like, I
kid.
don't identify with any of that.
Right.
That will never reach me because of these diagnoses.
Right.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Right.
And
then most
of
the time, you're already, in almost every case, you're already dealing with resentment.
Yeah.
Don't want to listen to you. You don't know who I am. You don't really care about me. And as the child grows older, that becomes stronger and stronger because it's like, I know what the game is. I know what's going on here. You're going to, okay, I'm leaving this family because they didn't really care about me. I'm just nobody, and go to another family. And all of that crap going on.
One of these days, I want to talk about that a little bit on this podcast. We recently let our foster license go, and it was a hard decision to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we were kind of backed into a corner by a child who knew the system better than we did. First off, he knew the system better than we did, and he knew his loopholes. He knew what he could do, and he knew what he could get away with, and he just did it.
Yep. Because you're just like anybody. You're educated as that foster child. You become educated on how this thing works.
But the thing is that at that point,
how to play it to your advantage.
At that point, you're old enough to know better, but you don't have the emotional capacity to do it for yourself.
Right.
Because in this case, we're talking about a 16-year-old that functions emotionally like an 8-year-old.
Well, it's one of those things any teenager in a good home environment that was raised by their parents. There's that teen years.
Still gonna.
That's kind of a little rebellious and. Pushing the line and moving it a little bit. Don't cross this line. They nudge it a little bit farther out. So that's a natural thing in all the psyche and growing up and adolescence. Yeah. Then you have a kid.
Then we add these dysfunctions, these
misunderstandings. You add a child that's never had any of that foundation and his
brain
direction.
Is literally wired different.
Right. Yeah.
It is a different wiring.
And part of it is sad, but it's true. Is that I don't give a F what you think.
Yeah. Oh, I heard that in no uncertain terms.
Because who are you? You don't care about me. Because they've been conditioned to feel this way. It's sad. And it's one of those things like we talked about in the previous episodes. You have a caseworker that has so many kids in their case file. They can't. It's like it's no different. You look at it this way. You go into these schools. You have a teacher. The Georgia School, my alma mater, out by Irvine, California, produced some of the smartest, brightest, most successful, the valedictorians, most likely to succeed students. And the reason why was because my graduating class in 8th grade was 11 kids.
That's huge. That's a great deal. I mean, with 11 kids, a teacher stands a chance.
And when we get to my 8th grade year, you'll find out just how important that was.
Yeah.
But that's it. So a caseworker, a teacher can. I tell some of my friends that are teachers when they call me up and they talk to me about a student they have that's a foster kid and they're dealing with because they're rebellious, they're troublemakers, or this and that.
What do we do, John? Yeah.
And I tell them, well, you know how you have so many students in a class and how tough it is to keep up with all of them when you have 25 to 30 kids. Well, a caseworker has probably that many, if not double, in a case, and there's just not enough time given that really is necessary because that's just how the system is, and it's not the system's fault per se. It just sucks, but that's what we're dealing with.
The system's trying,
and that's what I like about. Since we're on this subject, I want to throw this out there. What I love about CASA.
Yeah, same.
So we can end this episode on this. This is a very important thing is that CASA, there's what we found out there's 49 states has a CASA program.
It's court-appointed special advocates.
Yep.
And these advocates will sign on to a case and they'll ride basically one child from
once they're in the system until they leave. Yeah. They're with them. Don't matter if they go to another foster home, 3 months later, another foster home, 6 months later, another foster. That advocate is the constant.
I was trying to figure out entrance to exit, but that's not really it. But it's kind of it.
But that is such a huge thing. That is
to have an ally through that process.
Exactly. That advocate is an advocate for the child, not the foster parent, not the caseworker, and they build a relationship that is important with the child because then here's a constant. This person cares about
and
me.
hopefully learn the case.
Yes.
Like
exactly.
This is the case. This
Take
is what's happening.
Heart.
Okay. I see these cause and effect things going on. Maybe this. We'll check it.
My here's a quick little story. My mother-in-law, Linda, years ago, went to one in Bakersfield, California. Went to one of the meetings for the CASA of Kern County, and they asked her in the interview, gave her a scenario: if a child was being physically abused, what would you do in that situation? And she said, I would pull a gun on the people abusing that child.
Damn straight.
And she wasn't bullshit. She's like, no, you don't hurt a child.
Yeah.
So they're like, oh, well, okay. Well, thank you, Mrs. Wright. We appreciate you coming in. But she didn't become a CASA because she's brutally honest.
Yes, she's like,
I'd get that.
That dude.
I totally get that. But what I was going to say is here in Sedgwick County, where Wichita is located, there is CASA of Sedgwick, and we have some wonderful friends, Danielle Thompson and the gang, that do this. That they help these foster kids in our county, and they're swamped.
They need your help.
Need help.
If you think you have the time, I would encourage you to volunteer.
It's a volunteer thing. And one of the deals they did last year was the first time they did it, and they're going to do it annually. They're coming
Sounds
up.
like they're doing it again.
They're doing it again.
Kind of advertising already.
Right, I've seen that. It's called Battle of the Bands. And what it is, they take four bands, artists, and to me, it's like the coolest, funnest fundraiser I've ever been involved in. We did it last year, the first year they did it, and it's Battle of the Bands. We did not care one bit about winning. That doesn't mean nothing to us.
Don't go into it for that.
Our mindset was, let's go have fun, and let's get people to come out and help financially, because it was a fundraiser to help proceeds to be able to acquire more volunteers to help them, to train them, these advocates. And so they're doing it again in April, and we'll get the dates. This time I should have had it with me, but it just popped in my head. But it's a really great thing. If there's any local bands here in the Wichita area or outlying area, up there in Park City and Hutchinson or Salina, wherever, Pratt, Wellington.
And wasn't there a gig? Weren't they able to play
at the Wave?
The Wave.
The Wave.
No. I mean, there was a gig where the winner got to play.
Oh, they played at the Dam Jam.
That's what I thought.
I don't know if that's still the case, but I know last year that was the case.
We'll make it happen.
But we'll just say that it's a great thing if you're an artist, if you're in a band, even solo. You don't have to be a band. I know it's Battle of the Bands, but just Tori participated last year. Holy
I thought
moly.
she had a band.
Well, did she have a band?
I thought she did.
You know what? Maybe she did. Okay. No. Well, just Tori participated with the band. She was phenomenal. Every one of the bands were great.
And who was it that won? It was
Sometimes Sunday.
Sometimes on Sunday.
Sunday?
That's
was
right.
that it? Somewhere on Sunday. Yeah. Sometime on Sunday.
Yep.
Someone on Sunday.
Sometimes on Sunday.
That's it. And I enjoyed every one of the bands. Just Tori. They were. Sometimes Sunday was. I just loved it.
Yeah.
And they won, and I was so happy for them. Really great band. And all these acts are still here in Wichita. So go out and see them. Look them up on Facebook.
Yeah, definitely.
Social media stuff, and see where they're playing. But yeah, it's that CASA of Sedgwick County. Any CASA. There's CASA of Kern County, which does that Village Fest puts on every year, a big event, which is where I was at this past September, and that's why we hadn't done any of these episodes during that time, because I was out there with that, because that's another one in my hometown. Covenant Community Services, check them out. CASA, any CASA volunteer organization in your town, city, wherever. Like it was 49. They said 49 states have it. That's an important thing. Help those kids. So, anyways, that's about it. We can end this episode on a positive here, I think.
Yeah, John. As always, I appreciate you Sharing your story, man.
Yeah, we'll be back for episode 6, which will be 5th grade. So 6th is 5th grade.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is probably those next couple of episodes, or the next episode, we'll probably put 5th and 6th in there, because
you want to get back on to a schedule like that,
as far as
7 to be year 7.
Could be, might be a good idea, because I mean there was some positive influences, things that happened in my 5th grade year that were some abuse that I just wish I never went through.
I don't want to leave you.
Want on any kid to go through.
I don't want to leave anything out, man.
No, we won't, and I mean we'll get into and touch on it. I don't want to delve into it too much, because it's one of those things that's still embarrassing, a lot of this stuff. And like I told you before, when I sit down and start thinking about it, then my mind's like, oh my God, that did happen. You kind of put it back there way far back there.
Well, you bury it, and that's how we
and
deal with trauma.
You think it was just a dream, and then when we started doing this, and I put out an outline, kind of have as a navigation to go through this, telling my story. It's like, wow, holy crap! And then I find out from my adopted cousins, they had similar experiences too. So then I found out it wasn't just me, because I always for years thought it was just because I was a foster kid, I was an orphan. Who cares about what happens to Johnny? We can abuse him and do this to him, and nobody's going to pay any attention because he's a retard. And then I find out that I had adopted cousins that were
let's save that for next time, brother.
Yeah.
But
so yeah,
I do appreciate you.
Thank you guys for checking us out. We're Backseat Therapy, and we're trying to just help out others, that's dealt with life like I have.
I think that by talking about it, we can normalize the conversation. And if we normalize the conversation, I think just talking about the experience and the abuse is therapeutic.
Yeah.
Just talking about it and getting it out.
I will say this. I'm in the next, in a future episode, I'm going to talk about this thing called anxieties.
Yeah.
That's a big thing today. Anxieties,
it's a big
depression, and that there's some insight that I hope I can give that might help some people that's dealing with young people that are dealing with a lot of anxiety or dealing with a lot of depression. It is a clinical situation, there's
a lot.
There's some things that I did as a young man that I don't want to get into it now, that I think saved me from going into just immense depression and everything. So, and I'll
hold that thought. We'll save it for future episodes.
Yeah, I will.
Thank you guys for tuning into Backseat Therapy.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
And
be good humans.
Yeah, be good humans and be
Mark
good
Thompson
to humans.
Always said with Mark and Brian.
Be good humans and be good to humans.
Yes, exactly.
Little boy playing in the street, worn clothes, no shoes on his feet. Little boy never